Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. This is the National Debt Clock. So I got a bunch of things to cover, of course, World War III, impending World War III. But I want to talk about this collapse of our civilization on a lot of different levels. I've been aware of this for pretty much my whole life. The end of our current way of life. It was just something I was in tune with. And so it's made it easier for me to understand. It's part of my spiritual belief system as well. That came in later. My brother was a truther, which I was aware of some of these narratives early on. But, growing up as an American kid, I was aware that at some level, like I couldn't articulate it, but I knew what was going to happen here. Um, you know, it's not like some talent or something that I'm, you know, it's going to be financially beneficial to me, but it's something that it makes it easier for me to explain and accept and understand. So here's the national debt. I cover this quite often, right? This is, it's when I first started looking at this, it was at 26, I guess, trillion dollars. I have an old, let me see if I can find that here. So here is a video that I published in 2014, 9 years ago. And it was entitled The Economic Collapse of 2019, and I've explained this. I just made this available for members. It was a privatized video, with COVID and all these things. But I, when I was looking at the national debt clock, there was 16, almost $17 trillion. So that's 2014, 9 years ago. So 10 years ago would have been some trillions less. So we've doubled the national debt since I've covered this, right? So it was, 2000 and, 2014. Since that time, we're up well beyond, doubling this debt. I mean, more doubling the debt, right? It's 34. So that would have been 32. We doubled it at 32. So in the past 9 years, this debt has doubled. And it's just going to continue, right? There's no relief in sight. Total amount of debt here is supposedly $100 trillion. The amount of taxes we get per year is, they're saying it's up to $4 trillion. Up to this point, it was below $4 trillion. It was $3 trillion and something, $3 trillion 5, $3 trillion 6. So that's the amount of tax revenue that they're creating. So this is not going to pay off this. Certainly isn't going to pay off this. Our gross national product is less than $20 trillion globally. This is the unfunded liabilities is up to $214 trillion. Medicare, $41 trillion. Social Security, $26 trillion. There's not enough money. You can't fake it. You can't fake the fudge the numbers enough to pay this, right? So let me move over to a voiceover here. So I was thinking about this yesterday. My wife and I were coming back from a trip, and I want to get this in. This is, I don't think I've discussed this before or even had these thoughts before. But maybe I have, but, it's been a while. And like I was saying, I'm just geared for this. It's something like I was made for this, right? Like it's part of my DNA and my spiritual makeup. And I've been around civilizations collapsing before. It's familiar to me. And I, have a sense of it ever since I was a young kid. And then all the things that are congruent with this in my life and in my spiritual life and things. And what we're seeing now, and it's, more difficult for other people to accept, and so that's why I make these videos. What we're seeing now with these wars and all the things that you're seeing out there, and the division and the hatred between groups and all the things that are happening, is that they can't guarantee your lifestyle. And I've talked about that before. But when people are used to something and are entitled to it, they feel entitled to it, it's a hard sell to get them to cut back. When they want to reduce your pay at work because the company's suffering and they're going to say you're going to do the same job and get paid less, that's hard for people to accept, right? I mean, it becomes a prideful thing and just something about dignity or whatever it is. And the questions of fairness. And so when when you grow up in America, there's this promise, this unspoken promise, and spoken promise that things are only going to get better. That the economy. I mean, when we first left the farm, when they lured our ancestors off the farm or forced them off the farm, there was this idea that this economy, if they gave up all their intergenerational homesteading skills and their tribal skills and the things that had kept them alive for thousands of years and what it was like to be a real person, and they gave that up for 8-hour, specific labor, specified labor, where you had one specific skill and that's all you needed, and then everyone else would do their specific skill, and we'd work together in these big cities like a colony, which we're not designed to. We're multifunctional, and it's hurt us in terms of developing completely as human beings. But we gave all those things up with the promise that you wouldn't have to reclaim those things later on and figure out how to live without the system. That the system would always be here for you. It's the real big lie. That this idea that the system was indestructible, it was too big to fail, and as long as people participated willingly in the system, it would continue on, and it's just not possible because you see it's a debt-based system. It's a scam. It's a flim-flam scam. And they can't, even fudge the numbers enough to keep it going. It should have collapsed years ago. You see the debt rising. The national debt's nothing to the collective debt. The derivatives market, which I show you, is like around $7 trillion, $700 trillion. And that's just for America. So we have this, it's over $2 quadrillion of debt just for America. Worldwide, it's like $2 quadrillion. And the earth itself isn't even worth that. There's not potential resources to ever balance out that debt. That's what happens to a usury system, a debt-based system. It usually doesn't get this big and last this long, but it's, inevitably the debt just doesn't make sense anymore. You can't lie about it. I mean, at least the people who know the system know that there's no way for the system to keep on going the way it is. And there's always these depressions and economic recessions that hit people because of that, because of false promises and the fact that this isn't a real system, right? It's not based in God. And then there's the spiritual problem, which is more profound. That whenever you do something that doesn't align with your soul, and religion's part of that, because religion are not, the religion doesn't cultivate a relationship between you and your soul. It blocks it. So religions suck, and religions are anti-God, even more so because they pretend to be, godly in nature, but they're really disconnecting you from God. But whenever you go against your soul's path and the divine will, then there is immediate reaction that's given to bring you back, right? To make you, create the opposition to your bad decision, right? To your mistake. There's always consequences. They're there to push you back in the right direction. If you keep on ignoring those things, which you see people doing throughout their lives, and some people are, almost criminal about it. They're like hating God, and they're doing it willfully, where other people just pretend not to understand, or they're too dense to figure it out, but they're being told all the time to reverse their course because they're going away from their soul's path, and they're creating more misery and more difficulties in the future. And so when a system goes against the will of God, like our debt-based system, then it immediately is aligned against any sort of, it's not sustainable. You have to align with the divine forces, and you have to accept what God gives you, and you have to ride the waves, the good, the bad, things change, and you can't keep things consistently. That's the other part, where they've, tried to promise us like climate in our houses, and, water flowing to our, to our sinks and our bathrooms and all these things, and the lifestyle that, isn't sustainable, right? And infrastructure breaks down, and moving vehicles and the travel and all the things that we have, they just can't last forever, and nothing does. And civilizations collapse. It's inevitable. Everything dies, and especially when something goes against the will of God. So they can't tell you what I'm telling you, right? They can't tell you, oh, this is a bad system. It's been bad all along, because that would cause panic and immediate collapse. People are too weak to to deal with that. They can't level with you and say, look, you're going to have to go back to living more primitive lives, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. People won't change, and they, again, loss of faith in the government, and outrage and blame, and they turn into a wild mob, and people suck, and the leadership sucks more, and the people suck, and there's no way of reasoning with people and getting them to accept the truth. You know this when you talk to your sheeple relatives. Like, people just don't want to hear the truth, and when they are forced to, they get angry, right? And they blame and they do whatever, and they want to. They just can't accept it. And the people who live in an evil empire like ours, and this has gone on for thousands upon thousands of years, they have to, there has to be shock value. They have to be shook and rattled, and some people just check out and give up. But there's a process historically on how to deal with people who have a certain lifestyle that they feel entitled to. The ultra wealthy classes, all these people, right? And you see it, like even the royal families, these dukes and duchesses, and all these people, these types of relatives of the royal family. When things went south on them, and they couldn't sustain their royal lifestyle anymore, they were just left to go. Some of them were just left to be thrown under the bus, right? As the economy changed, and people who were wealthy lost money. They were impoverished. They went from riches to rags, right? This has happened in masses, in whole countries, and whole empires. And people get soft and entitled and mentally ill, and all the things that we see going on now. All this stuff to do with these young kids growing up, addicted to the internet, dysfunctional, no work ethic, no fight in them, no dog in them, no ambition and things like this. And so this is all inevitable, that there's a collapse. So how does it happen? You can't just tell people, hey, it's over. You had a nice run, and now you have to, go back to a lower standard of living. You just can't do that. They just, like I said, they won't accept it. And so that has to be introduced in one way or another. And a lot of what we're seeing now is not just for America, but it's for all peoples around the world. And, this idea that you'll own nothing and like it in, 5-6 years. This is, part of their plan, because they know they can't be sustained. The population numbers can't be sustained. There has to be population reduction. They know all this, right? And they're executing a plan, but on a bigger level, there's the divine mandate that they're not aligned with that says this system is, it's demonic. There are people who control the system that are wanting to reduce the lifestyle for the masses, but still retain their control and their power. And then there's the divine forces, which want a whole reset, right? Something, the people who run the system, the controllers, want a partial reset where they still retain power, but everyone else loses their privileges. And the divine forces want the leadership and the whole system taken down, and something more spiritual to replace it. And that's what's going to win out eventually. Because, the system can't sustain itself. It's a demonic system. And so all this stuff that you see playing out, all the details, they don't really matter. Because if it isn't this, it's going to be that, right? If it isn't cancer, it's going to be a heart attack, right? If it isn't war, it's going to be a plague. If it isn't, a plague, it's going to be, whatever it is, right? Mass mental illness or famine or, invasion or alien invasion, whatever it is, right? There's going to be something that's going to take the system down. And people who can't accept that can't accept that. But the people who can, they can prepare themselves one way or another, whether they decide that it's just too much for them. And the older people, like, I've known about this for a long time, and I have better skills than most people in terms of farming and things like that. And just, in general, I'm not an expert, but I'm better off than probably 90% of the people. But, I'm older, and I don't know how much of this change I can endure. You become more set in your ways, and it's harder to change when you get older. You don't have it physically, and you just don't care about it as much, right? Life doesn't seem, worth living. It's going to be a situational something, but at least you can prepare spiritually for what's happening. and accept it. It's for the greater good, right? I mean, whatever you want to attribute to the controllers, that's one of the big problems with the truth community. They think the controllers, the so-called elite, are all powerful, and they're not. They're the most powerful because they're not. They don't have creative force anymore, and they're disconnected from God. They're the least. They need other people's will force to manifest things because they can't manifest it themselves. I've talked about that in the past. But in terms of all this, there's a story at the end of the Mahabharata. Krishna had built this all-powerful army, and he was a divine being. He was the god or the cosmic functionary Vishnu of preservation, and he had built this. He had a kingdom, he had an army, and he knew it was time for him to die. He was shot in the toe by an arrow, and that killed him. Bizarrely enough, like that kind of thing. But he was, ready to leave, and he knew he couldn't leave this army, because whoever took control of the army would destroy, would be in control of the world, and it would be somebody probably bad. So he needed this army who he loved and trained, and was part of his whole thing. But he needed them to be destroyed. And they went, there's a war with themselves. It was a whole thing, right, that happened. Like they just, they went to this frenzy, this killing frenzy, and they destroyed themselves, right? But it had to happen because, there's things that won't make it through the transition. And America is one of those things, right? And America is in that same process of destroying itself. There's America, as powerful as it is, and as dominant as it has been over these last so many years, and it's a big part of the British extension of the British Empire. It's now destroying itself. The kids growing up today are self-destructive, suicidal, depressed, and want no part of material life in the real world, and all the division that's happening with everybody else, becomes a snake eating its own tail, right? That's America has to go down, and it sucks when you live here, and you're used to a certain kind of what America has been, but it's not going to be that anymore. And it's for the greater good. Anyways, let's cover some of these other topics here. Okay, so let's start here. So Israel did something to Iran. I don't know what it was. Really wasn't paying attention. And then Iran sent 300 drones with missiles, but they were, so the very little damage was done. In its overnight attack, Iran sent more than 300 drones and missiles towards Israel, but did not cause major damage or injuries because the U.S.-led coalition destroyed most of the projectiles. So there really wasn't much of anything done there, they're saying. Iran said it gave warning before attacking Israel. U.S. says that's not true. And then Iran's attacks on Israel raised fear of a wider war, but all sides have also scored gains. And then the latest, Israel says it will respond to Iran's attacks as the world leaders urge restraint because not that much damage was done. And this was something, Moment Britain's $140 million laser, or pound laser, whatever it was, weapon dubbed Dragonfire blows drone out of the sky. Incredible classified footage. Let's watch it because it's classified. If it's classified, but we get to watch it apparently. Boom, there it is.
The British Ministry of Defence has released the first footage of its new Dragonfire laser gun shooting down a drone in the...
Kaboom! Laser gun, Dragonfire. Britain's got it. Alan Richkin's scathing takedown of Trump is the best thing we've read all day. This was a report. I'm a Christian quite simply because of what Jesus called us all to do. Love other people until death. It doesn't mean we're all to be hung on a cross, but how can I suffer for you? This is a beautiful thing. Christians today have become the most vitriolic tribe. It's so antithetical to what Jesus was calling us to do, to be, and to do. Trump is a blankist and a con man, and yet the entire Christian church seems to be treat him like he's a poster child, and it's unreal. I don't understand. This was this guy, right? highs and lows of Alan Rickson. He's the guy who was a model and apparently was hard. Here he is on his motorcycle. He was multiple times sexually assaulted by photographers, even though he's 6'5" and 250 pounds. Tried to hang himself recently, and then he made that horrible second season of Reacher. And now he's slamming Trump, which is so, I mean, who in Hollywood does that? Google staffers arrested, placed on leave after 10-hour protest over $1.2 billion Israeli contract. So Google's having its problems. And then we have Don Lemons, who, in one of his recent shows, don't miss, going live on my YouTube at 7 p.m. Eastern. Trump's trial, Israel, O.J. Simpson. Nothing is off limits. Nothing's off limits for Don. So this got 33,000 views, which is probably a more accurate assessment of his 625 comments. So almost no. And for a guy who's famous and was on TV and, access to millions of people, he's got almost no response here. Almost no audience. But here he is, low tech with the Don Lemon Show behind him.
Alrighty, I think we are live.
Do you know Don, or you think?
And there are people here asking already. Wow, I didn't think you guys would be here already. So I hope that you can hear me. Hello, everyone. So I'm so happy to be back here. I hope your Sunday is going great. I hope you had a great weekend. I'm happy to be back because I did a live on Friday. Say hello if you can hear me. I did a live on Friday and it went really well. I love taking your questions. I love just talking to you guys. I wish that I could see you on the screen or that we could speak, but we can't. So I'm so happy you're here. Let me know if you can hear me. So thank you so much for joining. Really,
Okay, Don, let's get to it.
really appreciate it. We have a lot to talk about. We're talking about what happened over the weekend in Israel as it relates to Israel and Iran. Iran fired some 300 drones and missiles toward Israel this weekend. Luckily, nobody was killed.
So it was a non-event then, right?
And 12 people were injured, but luckily nobody was killed. Participating in intercepting those missiles and drones, the United States, Britain, Jordan, France, all helping out.
How did they help out intercepting those drones? What was their capabilities in that region? They're saying all four of these places had some kind of technology there, lasers or anti-aircraft or whatever it is, that that they're all sitting their way to intercept drones
toward Israel this weekend. Luckily, nobody was killed, and 12 people were injured, but luckily nobody was killed. Participating in intercepting those missiles and drones, the United States, Britain, Jordan, France, all helping out to intercept. Again, nobody died, but 12 people were injured. The talk for me this weekend, and everybody I was speaking to said they were wondering if we're going to get dragged into a World War III. I don't know if we're going to go that far. Do we want to call it
It's just a matter of time, Don.
an escalated world war? I'm not sure about that. Also,
Not sure, but nothing's off limits.
as I said, we're going to talk about the Trump trial. That's coming up on Monday.
Trump trial.
Jury selection happens on Monday, which is going to be really, really, really interesting. We want to talk about that. Also, O.J. Simpson.
What happened with OJ?
Are you surprised that O.J. Simpson this story is getting so much attention? O.J. Simpson died. He was suffering from prostate cancer. I didn't know about it. I don't think it was widely known.
You didn't know about his prostate. You weren't getting news alerts about OJ Simpson's prostate.
But it has been my timeline. I shouldn't say my timeline. My text messages have really been going crazy with people asking, "Do you think OJ is guilty or innocent? What do you think? Is he guilty or innocent?" Obviously for the Goldman family and for the Brown family, it's awful, and you feel awful for them. But as I have been telling people, this trial wasn't really, at least in the public sphere, it wasn't about guilt or innocence. It was really about race.
No, come on, bro.
Coming off the heels of Rodney King. I just rewatched, I don't know, a really great 30 for 30 on ESPN. It's called OJ Made in the USA. or O.J. Simpson Made in the USA, so good.
You know, the trial itself was whatever it was. It had took place in California, and I mean, whatever corruption was there, whatever happened there, but they had a jury, and they found him innocent, right? And you know, people's opinion on it, but it seemed like the evidence was kind of overwhelming that he did it. You know, I don't, you know, whatever, right? Um, but somebody in his position, like, go out on a limb and say one thing or the other, right? Don't just say it was race related. Say what you think. You think he was guilty or innocent? Just say it, Don.
Good and explains everything, what happened coming off of Rodney King, and also the killing of a young lady at a deli in California, and a couple of
Thumbs
other
up.
related issues. But so let's discuss these things. And if you want to, we can talk about my wedding. I would love to talk about that. We've been married officially now for a week. Tim is in the room.
We saw you jump a broom and you got like crazy hops.
Along with
You
our
and Tim. Tim was he jumped. You know, I mean, the way you guys cleared that broom.
3 dogs, our little family. You see all of our family portraits up on the mantle with some of the leftover flowers from the wedding and the reception.
Are you giving us a finger, Don? It's got a weirdly shaped hand. Like, what is that? Like, it's like.
See those? We had much more the other night, and we had them like, oh, there's some right here too.
Oh, they're
We
there.
just
Where are they? Over there.
Yeah, we just sort of keep them here until they die out. But I'm so happy that you can join us, and I'm going to answer some of your questions. So ask me anything. Please be respectful. I'm here because I'm trying to grow a community. I'm trying to get people to, you know, have conversations. And I would love people who have differing opinions to be able to come to our network and our channel and have these conversations.
You don't have a network. You're on Twitter, and you're here, and you have no audience. And as far as I can tell, you have no sponsorship. So you're doing a free show, and you're not running ads. You're getting 30,000 views on YouTube, and you know whatever else. I mean, I don't know if you're taking donations. And you know, Twitter isn't really happy with you anyway.
So thank you for joining. Let's get into the questions, shall we? So I see there are some folks from Canada here. Thank you from Canada, hooked by Don, and also Kylie Karma. Thank you so much. They're doing great, Don. Love
Wait,
your
what does Kylie Karma say?
show from Canada. I really appreciate that. Austin's Art says, hello, Don.
Hello, Don. Read the comments, every one of them. Go from the beginning to the end. Just read them all.
Congratulations on your wedding from Lexa Power. Blue Jay says, your husband going to join you on air sometime? Can you show your face or no? He's right here. He doesn't really want to show his face.
He's in the room with you?
He will in a little bit. Yeah, maybe. You can hear him. He says, yeah, maybe. So Beth H says, I am in Orchard Park, New York, home of the Bills. I was a kid in the 1970s, but everybody loved OJ, was a great guy and phenomenal athlete, but he went crazy over a woman. So unfortunately, yes, he did it. Everyone has their opinions about it. I think the consensus from a lot of people is that he did it. But I would urge you to watch that documentary if you can. It's on Netflix, and I think it's also on ESPN, but you have to pay for it. If you can find it, it's a ESPN 30 for 30, and it's called OJ Made in the USA, or OJ Simpson Made in the USA. And as I was watching it,
As he watched it, he realized, wow, this is what real journalism looks like.
bringing me back to that time when the prosecution and the defense were going at it. The prosecution really put on a weak case. They had amazing, amazing evidence, but they screwed up. The police department screwed up as well. The police department mishandled evidence.
Well, how are you saying it's about race then? It sounds more like it's about incompetence. That the prosecution had all the evidence and didn't put it together. And so you're saying that they sabotaged it on purpose for racial tensions, or what are you saying here?
Police were said to have planted evidence. Mark Furman did not help out with his racist tapes and using the N-word. And I mean, it was just
Furman.
Nightmare. And then,
come on, Furman.
When Chris Darden had O.J. Simpson try on those gloves in the courtroom, that was really the end of the story. So they did have great evidence.
You know why? Because if they don't fit, you have to let them go.
But it was amazing to see how the defense really screwed up. The prosecution really screwed up, in the defense, they were amazing. I mean, Johnny Cochran and all the attorneys, Barry Scheck, fantastic attorneys, and even, I forget the other guy's name,
Kardashian. You forgot the Kardashian guy.
but also really, really great attorney. Where are the wedding photos? There are some wedding photos on my social media. You can look at them. I'll share a little bit more with you. Donald Albert says, OJ, a wet glove gets much smaller after drying. In my mind, he was guilty. Okay, great. Yes. But you know what?
The old wet glove theory. This is riveting content, Don. You got some really brainiacs making really intelligent statements and asking great questions about wedding photos and shrinking gloves.
You shouldn't have someone try on a glove that doesn't fit in a courtroom. And if you didn't know it was going to fit, as one of the people in the documentary said, never ask a question. I think it was actually Jeffrey Toobin is going to be on my show this week. Says never, as an attorney, never ask a question that you don't know the answer to.
Exactly. We've heard that a million times.
Didn't know if that glove was going to fit, and they put it on, and in front of the jury and the world, they didn't fit. And then Johnny Cochran and his team came up with that. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And as we know,
That was brilliant. I mean, Cochran, come on. The guy was a genius.
that is what happened. Don, off the subject, this is from Honey Love 6855. Don,
Okay, Honey Love. Now we're getting to it.
the subject, your skin is flawless. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Your skin is flawless. All right, we're going to end with that. Let's go back and listen to Honey Love's comment here.
They didn't fit. And then Johnny Cochran and his team came up with that. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And as we know, that is what happened. Don, off the subject, this is from Honey Love 6855. Don, off the subject, your skin is flawless. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I also did just a little bit, just to be honest, not powder, but just a little thing to take the shine off.
It's got it right there in front of him.
It's a little sponge, and I
He's got a sponge there.
wipe myself down with a paper towel.
Go, Don.
That's it, that I'm actually using as a coaster for my Coca-Cola. So
He's got it going on there. He's got quite the setup.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I love that Lifestyle Brow said, I love your interview with Elon. I really appreciate that.
These are the comments. It's not. You don't read comments like that, right? Like, there's not very many people comment if you can read every one. You got to read the ones that are actually going to move the still forward. But, he's just so dopey. Okay, so yesterday I was trying to upload this video about the movie Ava to my Apocalypse Now channel. I started to put it up here. But they kept on copyrighting, and I just got to stop making videos like that. It's unfortunate. It's like commentary videos of bad movies. I enjoy making those videos. People find it funny. But it's just too much copyright stuff. So I'm putting it up today just for members on my, I go through, show clips of it, and it may or may not be viewed in some areas. It's that kind of a thing. But that's the last time I'll make a movie like that. Because I spent all day yesterday trying to tweak it, and it just didn't work. So just some more stuff here with Don Lemons. He had Neil deGrasse Tyson on yesterday. I started this video yesterday. You see he's got 2,100 views, 22,000 views, 29,000. And these may or may not be legitimate numbers. He doesn't have an audience, right? For a famous person, he doesn't have an audience. And he had a big social media following on, Instagram and whatever it was, and Twitter, and he doesn't, there's not much there. Here it is on X, is still, and so, like this crying about Elon not wanting to pay him, like you got to generate money with views. And also not just like people clicking on watching a couple minutes of it. And so here we can go to the Neil deGrasse Tyson thing here.
Well, cicadas are coming. There's going to be a trillion
Wait,
cicadas.
is it cicada, tomato?
Yeah.
I'm from Louisiana. I say cicada.
I'll go with you.
But go on.
Cicadas are coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
No one says cicadas.
And that's this summer.
It's the first time I ever heard anybody say cicadas.
The next few months. I have a podcast. We did a whole episode on this. We have a colleague of mine who's a specialist in just that form of invertebrate insect.
You know when I knew it was time to go home?
What?
When I would hear the cicadas. We would call them crickets. And I'm sure they're not crickets, but that was
They're not the same thing.
I know, that's what
a
we would
cricket
call
is a cricket, and a cicada.
But we would hear, you'd hear them, for some reason they would seem to get louder around dusk, I don't know why.
Yeah,
And
yeah. They're trying to find a mate.
is that what's happening? Yeah.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah. But seriously, where are we now? Because we did have an earthquake in New York, which is rare.
Yes,
Right.
rare at that magnitude. It was.
Okay, so this nobody likes this guy, right? I mean, does he have a following? Like he shows up, his worst Don Lemon's worst rated shows was this guy's interview. You know, it's a huge drop off from Elon Musk. But here he talks about AI. Let's just watch this and then move on.
You have talked about AI, which you've called it a nail in the coffin because of the rise of deep fakes and so on. Why do you say it's a nail in the coffin? Do you really think AI is that dangerous? Where is it on your list?
Oh, yeah. I don't know what coffin you're talking. Did I say nail in the coffin?
Yeah, you said.
That sounds like
it's a
somebody.
quote, nail in the coffin. You said artificial intelligence is a nail in the coffin.
Okay, but actually, you don't have to read that because I'm sitting here right next to you.
No, I'm just saying. I know. I want to make sure.
Oh my God.
I can actually.
No, I want to make sure I have
can
the quote.
Forget the quote.
And I'm looking
I don't care what
for-
the quote is. I am here in person.
No, I
so
understand
ask me
that.
about AI.
But
Well,
you just said, did I say that? And I wanted to get the reference to where you said it because I want to
Where did
be
I say it?
accurate.
Go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's because you're known for that. You're known for your journalistic integrity.
So it was something
the
that you
journalist in
tweeted.
you coming out.
No,
That's-
that
there you
was
go.
you tweeted that. You said prophecy when AI perfects deep fakes of people, blah 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 blah, and that's when you went on to say that.
Blah 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 blah. And so he's talking about the internet. There's no nail in the coffin here. There's no nail in the coffin. You got it completely wrong. When AI, there's no blah blah blah. When AI perfects deepfakes of people, places, things, no news will be trusted. Even those previously believed fake news will think fake news is faked. At the moment, a tear in the space-time continuum will open and swallow the social media from the internet. Well, you could also be used for mainstream media. Like they really want to get rid of this is his whole show. A guy who's fired and been completely dissed by mainstream media in Don Lemons. His whole show is about getting rid of alternative media and truthers and anything that isn't what he was fired from, right? What he was disgraced from. And and so, I mean, like the guy, like he's kind of, I mean, he isn't one of us, but he's one of us, right? Like he's not allowed on mainstream media.
And I said nail in the coffin?
Yeah, I think you said nail. Yeah.
He didn't say nail in the coffin. It's not there.
Deep fakes. Believe that deep fakes were already news is faked.
So you made that up in your mind, Don. You said nail in the coffin.
Blah blah blah. But there is, yeah, coffin for the internet. Coffin for the internet.
Yeah,
You
so
didn't say it. We just saw so you weren't accurate. Like it's just your mind doesn't work well, Don. You did not say nail in the coffin. We just read it.
right now,
There's no words here. There's no coffin. You can see I just read the thing. There's no coffin. There's no nail in the coffin. There's none of that, right? And open swallow all social media from the internet. That's what he said. He said at the moment a tear in the space-time continuum will open up because nail in the coffin is not something he would say. This is something he would say. At the moment a tear in space-time continuum will open and swallow all social media from the internet. So let's watch this exchange again.
Deep fakes of people, blah 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 blah, and that's when you went on to say that.
and I said nail in the coffin?
Yeah, I think you said nail. Yeah, deep fakes. Believe that deep fakes were already news is faked. Blah blah blah. But there is, yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. That's not journalism. Blah, blah, blah is not journalism. That's you, Don. You're blah, blah, blah.
Coffin for the internet. Coffin for the internet.
Yeah, so right now, there is, I mean, who would have guessed this 20 years ago? Right now, there's content on the internet that is true
Yeah.
and content that is purposefully false.
Right.
Oh, look at him cracking the code. Cracking the code. This is his whole thing. And his whole thing as well, right? The people who used to be the knowers and the sayers. He's a knower, and Don Lemon's a sayer, a news reader, right? And so you used to have the news readers and you used to have the knowers who were the experts. And the knowers and the sayers are upset because now people who have they had a narrow width of reality, constructed reality that was mainstream endorsed, that they were allowed to talk about. And they had handlers and they had rules and they had a community and they were the arbiters of the truth. Back in the early times of Christianity, there was Lutheranism, where there was this guy, Martin Luther, who wanted average people to be able to read the Bible. And at that time, the Bible was written in Latin and was only to be owned and read by clergy, whatever it was, the Catholic Church or whatever it was, and the powers that be. I don't think the Protestant had become a thing yet. The Protestant, the deviation from the Catholic Church that ended up being Protestant religions. And so you couldn't own a Bible and you couldn't interpret it for yourself. You had to have a priest do that. And so, that was the word of God. This is how it was controlled. And now it's science. You have to have people like Fauci tell you what the science says. But Fauci's owned by Big Pharma. And so, everything that they do is around Big Pharma and what Big Pharma wants. And they tell him what the truth is. And then he manipulates the science to say what they want him to say, right? So, this is what the control system is. But with the internet, people were able to do their own research, and experts and people who were not willing to go along with that paradigm started to speak up, and now these guys had lost their control. And the centerpiece of Don's life, there's this other guy, Donnie O'Sullivan, who had this, that guy, the fired guy, Brian Stelter, had that show, Reliable Sources. They had this whole wing of CNN devoted to undermining the truth community and people outside of that controlled system, right? And here Neil deGrasse Tyson is trying to do it again.
All right. I think, a good way to assess what is true and what is false. First, you check your bias at the door. Look at sources.
Right.
Look at
your bias, Neil.
verification of sources. Make sure the sources are not just repeated multiple times. So you have 10 different websites, but they're all quoting the same information, the source of information. So
you guys are going to do it. You guys are cracking the code of the internet. You just got it.
Source of information. So the fact that there's 10 websites doesn't make it 10 times as true. So you have to buffer against all of
Oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah. I see. Thanks for explaining that to me.
this. All right.
See, he couldn't even come out and say he made a mistake by saying nail in the coffin. That's something that Don Lemon would say. But he would say the space-time continuum thing because he's, pretentious and, all these things. But, these are two people who have been maligned by the truth community. I mean, all these mainstream people are, but these guys specifically, Neil deGrasse Tyson, because of his association with NASA and being just a blowhard, and Don Lemon being just a dope. But they're both, shills for the mainstream media. But, anybody watching Don Lemons doesn't have the capacity to be a truther. They don't. If you think Don Lemons is quality, I mean, any of these people, none of them are really good that are on the, mainstream media. Like, I can't think of anybody who's convincing and authentic as a mainstream media personality. Somebody who's, can convince their audience. But some are better than others. And they, for those people who have that bias, like liberal bias, anti-Trump bias, whatever, some people who are, might be able to be truthers who watch some of these other people. But not Don Lemons, because his stuff is so bad, they fired him for being a dope, basically. They fired him for being clueless and not being able to bring in an audience. Neil deGrasse Tyson, the same thing. Like, he's pseudoscience. And I don't know what kind of a fan base he has, but it's not a lot, right? It's not, they bring him on here because he'll shill for NASA and these other, whatever it is, the mainstream science story, he'll just go along with it. And he'll undermine people on the internet. Like, he's predicting something that will never happen, because we're never going back to the official story. You guys have lost our trust, right? There's, we all know it's BS. Like as much BS is on the internet, as much BS as there is in the truth community, you guys are worse, right? The mainstream media. It's just unwatchable. It's not only just lies, it's bad content. It's remedial lies, right? It's, the TV shows that are unwatchable because they're so bad.
Until now, there are people who believed the fake news as true.
Until
Oh, until now?
now, people still do.
Hold on. Okay, until the near future. There are people who believe fake news as true.
Right.
Yes, the Democrats are eating babies in the basement of the pizza shop
Right.
in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so that's not an accurate description of that issue.
When AI becomes so good at creating deep fakes, even the people who believe the fake news will no longer believe that the fake news is true.
Right.
Because the risk of this fake news being
Okay, so I know this to be BS. Like this guy, this scientific blowhard, because there's actual scientific data, the social, psychological, scientific data out there, because I know that there are things out there that have been proven to be fake. And we all know it. Before this, it already exists where people will make things up, and it could be, with the whole Q movement, for example, that turned out to be fake and wrong. And the people who eat this stuff up, who are not really truthers and don't have the capacity for it, but all of us have thought something was real and then later found out it was edited in a way to make it, before deepfakes even were available. And it hasn't killed the truth community, because we know the truth community, as flawed as it is at least potentially better than the mainstream media. The mainstream media is lost. You guys, they're trying to figure out a way that they can win things back. It's like he's bought a lotto ticket, or, Charlie in the chocolate factory, he's got the golden ticket with AI, and they'll come back, and all the people who are truthers are going to come back to you. It's not happening. Because the ones who are, just, the QBs and the flat earthers and the, all the, bogus truth movements, I mean, they're never, you can convince them, just like with Sheeple, they're never going to abandon their belief system. Just like mainstream media Sheeple, they don't do it. People don't do it. And they've been lied to. Like, the way that he's saying the truth community is going to be exposed by AI, the mainstream media has been exposed by AI, and there's all these people, all these sheeple out there who still believe in it. The mainstream media has been caught lying again and again and again. And you present the evidence to the people and they don't care. And same thing with the truth community, because the majority of people aren't seeking the truth, right? And you're not going to find it on the internet or in the mainstream, whether you're a truther or not, or any of these things. That's not the truth, right? Knowing that these guys, the mainstream media, is all lies, is not the truth. It's, you're finding out something that's happened to you, the deception that's happened to you. But that still isn't the truth. You're finding out the original story is a lie. But what is the truth, right? And the truth will never be, at least in this way of going about it, will never be found, right? You're never going to find the truth in a sea of lies.
Faked is so high that the entire internet will lose its integrity. And it will be buried under the weight of its own,
Wow.
of its own falsities, of its own, and then
You guys it's so bad. So watching this thing, they're breaking, he's cracked the code. This isn't science. This guy's supposed to be, I think, an astrophysicist. So he's just bullshitting here. He's just pontificating about what he thinks might happen with AI. He has to account for what people are going to do when the AI takes over and saturates the internet with all these, fake events that didn't really happen. And, he's putting stock in the fact that people on the internet are going to listen to so-called fact checkers or people like Don Lemons, and they're not, because they're untrusted sources. They're not going to go back to CNN. They're not going to go back to MSNBC. And so he's saying the whole internet, will be buried under it. No. People will either believe it or not, and it's already like that. The internet and everything's a lie now. Like, you can't trust anything. People are deceivers. And there's whole teams of people in the government that work to put out deceptive information. We know all that, right? I mean, but this is just like, he thinks he's got something here. He's got nothing, right?
Ability to check itself and to...
Correct. Because there are people just putting fake information on there because AI can do it. AI can do it like this. At first it was a fake voice and a fake image, a fake video, and someone...
So you're thinking that people are going to go back and trust CNN because CNN is trustworthy? No, well, they're not. Because CNN can do the same thing. You're saying the whole internet is wrecked, but, all media is wrecked. Because everything will be able to be faked. You won't be able to trust anything, which is the design of the government. Because if you can't trust anything, you'll just keep on going along with the system, right? Because you can't figure out the truth. Like, what they've done is made the truth impossible to find via the internet. That's why I talk about connecting to God and having a internal compass and finding the truth within, right? That's always been the answer. The internet isn't the place for truth. It never has been. Because, for one, it's anonymous. I mean, all of it. External newspapers it's trying to give an official story to people who own and control these papers and news agencies, make something official and make it trustworthy to people, and that's been lost. The only way newspapers are going under. You can't compete because they're not trustworthy. People don't trust them anymore. They don't trust the guy sitting there in a suit telling you what happened during the day. So there's been no trust on any level, which isn't a bad thing for the people who control the system because, you don't believe their lies anymore. At least some people don't. The sheeple do. But you also, you don't believe the other stuff as well, right?
Someone sampled 2 minutes of my voice and wrote it to say something. It sounded just like me.
Yeah.
However, I'm way more literate than what that person wrote to have AI speak.
So
I knew it wasn't me.
You knew it wasn't you?
You
You thought it was you, just like Don Lemon, like he just tried to do. It's amazing that this just happened, because Don Lemon tried to put words in his mouth and nail the coffin.
You might need other, because all I was doing is sampling my voice, not my literacy, not my education level.
Okay, but then what do we do then? Because most people...
Yeah, it's the end of the internet. Tombstone. Internet.
You think so?
1992 to 2026.
People love illusions. The whole thing's illusion. Life on planet Earth is illusion. Your physical reality is an illusion. And then there's just all the lies that are part of it now. It's an illusionary world, and people have made it more illusionary by lying. If people didn't lie, it's an illusion because your soul is something else. Your physical 3D dimensional life is like you're in a video game. That's illusionary, right? It's not what you truly are, your true essence of your soul that's eternal. And your short-lived life on planet Earth is, you could look at it as a simulation or whatever it is, right? But people love the illusion, like people love the Matrix. You think because there's deep fake, the lies already exist everywhere. It's just the capacity to lie has gotten, it's clearer now. Like you can, instead of doing some remedial cartoon of these two clowns, you can actually do an AI version of it, right? Where you turn them into characters and make them say whatever you want them to say through AI instead of making a cartoon. But the cartoon would still be funny and people would watch it, right? Whatever, something like South Park or something. And so, like, these guys, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know anything about people. He doesn't know anything about reality. And this guy's like, just, oh my God, you're just so brilliant.
It's the end of the internet. Then where does information and facts come from? Because everyone...
Books!
Everyone...
And
But we're
people.
going back to books.
Maybe.
Because
So maybe. So the internet's coming to an end, but you know where people are going to get their information. And this isn't about books. The information that you're going to get. See, Neil deGrasse Tyson is about, the moon landing being fake. And he can't produce science. They can't produce he can't produce the telemetry data that they lost for the moon landings, and he can't, prove that they ever made it through the Van Allen radiation belt. Those are the two big ones, and all the other little minor lies. But books would tell people that that actually happened. But what we're talking about is current events and politics and everything else. People are interested in what's happening right now. And with deep fake, you can pretty much manipulate anything and make it look like something else happened that actually happened. And so video is no longer to be trusted. And people aren't going to go back to reading when they have, their minds have been dumbed down by emojis and texting and things like this. But books aren't the answer because books don't cover current events. And so there's going to be no trust. I mean, that's what you're going to have. No trust in the official story, or people just submit to it because there's just like, oh, let's just go with the lies. Let's just, embrace the lies, which is the other inevitable outcome, which is already happening on some level. People then have their own subjective reality, and they go with the lies that fit with that, right? But either way, none of this stuff can last, right? People have been dumbed down so much that it's the end. Let's wrap these up, these two.
Everyone turns to the internet for information. You want information, you just put it a Google search or
people will recover in the timeline of knowledge. They will recover the true value of an expert.
really.
Boom. There it is. The true value of an expert. These blowhards, these pontificators that come on, these pundits, they're guests, and he's talking about himself. Like he's just so arrogant. He's just, I've been diminished, making fun of me all the time. They don't trust. I'm an expert, you guys. I'm an expert.
Information, you just put it a Google search or
people will recover in the
Look at how arrogant he is.
timeline of knowledge. They will recover the true value of an expert.
really.
And there it is. The true value of an expert. He's the expert, and they'll realize I'm so great. And I used to think I was great. Now I'm a joke because of the internet. But now they'll discover that you guys, we were right all. Like, this is just wishful thinking, bro. The true value of an expert. That's just wonderful. All right, I got some other things to cover here. Okay, so I'm editing. I just went through this thing. Very clean, this voiceover, which was great for me. But, I didn't really have a lot of things to edit out. Mistakes or whatever it was. Some glitches with the internet. But anyways, who cares? I was thinking about this, so I'm going to put it here. I'm going to respond to his Neil deGrasse Tyson saying, recovering the value of an expert, right? See, what's happened here in the so-called truth community and the internet is critical thinking has taken off, and it's not all great because a lot of people don't have the real capacity for critical thinking. Their minds aren't trained. They don't have the ability for abstract thought. So there are a lot of people out there who now are thinking for themselves and probably shouldn't, right? Because they're not good at it. But it's a step in the right direction either way. And that's the one evolutionary aspect about technology and the internet. Everything else is de-evolved people. It's made people weaker. It's gotten people away from the real world. But people now are able to verbalize their own opinions. There's a platform for you to say what you think. And, you could do it to your neighbors or, to your family, but they don't want to listen to you anyway, right? But now you can go out there and get an audience. And there are a lot of people who have an audience that shouldn't, but the audience is, dumb people like them, and they all, gravitate to it. The Q movement, these other movements and things like this. In this line, I'm going to do my own research, or you should do your own research, is so much overused, it's annoying. But that's actually happened. People will do their own research, which, again, isn't being done great, but at least people are on the right path. Because everything else was, you were told what to think. And Neil deGrasse Tyson and Don Lemons and CNN and all these, gatekeepers want to bring back that time where people just, were told what to think. and they didn't think for themselves. I mean, that's what they want. And they're desperate about it, and it's silly because it's never going to happen. Because, to figure out that everything's a lie is a part of that. Like, I don't believe anything. I was saying this to my chiropractor. He said, what about those 300 drone strikes? I go, yeah, but what if it's not true? Because if it's being told to me and I don't see it in real life, then, I don't distrust everything in some paranoid way. It's just that I don't take anything as fact. Like, I call this thing the show. And this is an illusionary world, which I referenced before. The idea of the Earth being a Maya, right? Illusion. It's illusionary because third-dimensional reality is illusionary. It's not what we truly are as a soul. So everything is, I take with a grain of salt. And people need to do that, lighten up about everything because, it's all it's either there's a plan or there's not. If there's a plan, if there's a God, there's a plan, and then there's all, part of it. Go along for a ride like you're in a movie or you're in a, some sort of an illusionary thing. It's not, nothing's that big a deal. But your behavior and attitude, staying grateful to God and, focusing on the bigger picture and what you can control in your own system, your own, internal system, your own decisions, your own character qualities and things. And that's the only thing that needs to be taken seriously, right? But in terms of what he's saying, that ship has sailed. This idea that people are going to go back to listening to people like him, so-called experts or pundits, and the networks that put them on there, that's over. Like aside from anything else, it's just bad content. Like he isn't, nobody wants to listen to that, right? The people who do are not, they have very little value because they're barely conscious, right? And one of the reasons I covered Don Lemons, like I got this, kind of a obnoxious comment saying with all things to cover, why are you covering Don Lemons, right? And, why don't you think about it? Because, there's certain things I cover here over and over again. And one of those is the battle between the mainstream media and the so-called truth community and alternative media. And, we've lost in some ways, because this is what I was thinking about this morning. My phone doesn't, when I go on YouTube, it doesn't recommend any truther videos. Now, I don't watch other people's truther videos, but when I did, it used to recommend them all the time. Like, all I got was truther videos. And now, even when you search for it, they don't recommend it. They recommend people debunking truther videos. They recommend, mainstream, what they call authoritarian news sources like CNN and MSNBC and Fox and the rest of it. But they don't recommend truthers. And, for that reason, it's harder to find, and people don't work at finding it. And, people don't even bookmark things. People are like, oh, I haven't seen your content in years. I'm like, well, yeah, you got to bookmark it, right? You got to show up here every day, or at least, regularly. And, you got to put some effort into it. They're hiding it, right? They're shadow banning truther content. So for that reason, there's been a loss in the truther world. And then there's just a lot of dopes and a lot of people just not growing and evolving and the, QBs and flat earth stuff and all that stuff. So it's, there's some damage that's been done to the truth community. But you as an individual can still seek the truth. And the first part is you can't believe anything, right? It's all an illusion. And, you can't put any real stock into anything. Really can't get upset about things until you see them and it plays out in some real way, right? But even then, it's illusionary in the sense that you're a soul and not get sucked in as much and take it light. That's the evolutionary step. And so AI, deep fake stuff is, well, yeah, we just don't believe in that as well as everything else, right? But certainly we're not going back to trust the so-called experts because they've been knocked off their pedestal because they're almost always wrong. Financial experts and scientific experts and, all of it, like political experts, they're almost always wrong. They get it wrong over and over again because they say things that they're told to say, and a lot of it's wishful thinking, and the world isn't going in that direction, right? And so they make these claims and they carry the water for people who end up sucking, and, they betray themselves by, I'm getting into Joe Biden here in a second, like he says his uncle was eaten by cannibals. And then, it's just so ridiculous, right? Anyways, let's get into the Joe Biden thing. Biden says his uncle may have been eaten by cannibals.
The next day, my mother's 4 brothers all went down to the recruiting station and joined the military. Every one of them volunteered. And my uncle, they called him Ambrose Brosey, they call him Bosey. My Uncle Bosey
His uncle Bosey,
was a hell of an athlete. They tell
he was one great athlete.
me when he was a kid. And he became an Army Air Corps before the Air Force came along. He flew those single-engine planes as reconnaissance over war zones. And he got shot down in New Guinea. And they never found the body because there used to be a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea.
Are you serious? Are you... No, for reals. There was cannibals there. Like, I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson and all these other people. Like, he's, an astrophysicist, but it doesn't take somebody who's specifically knows about dementia to see this guy has had dementia for a while, right? And they keep on carrying water for him and demeaning Trump. Him and Trump are very similar, and it's hard for Trumpers to see this as well. But Trump and Biden have they're almost the same age. Biden's a little bit older, and they have a lot of things in common in terms of their characters, and they're very similar. And, they have different political views based on what they're saying, but they're very, in terms of who they are as a person, they're very similar. And all these liberals who've not called JoJo out for being senile, especially now, you've lost all credibility. Because the guy's always been a dope, a plagiarizer, a groper, a sniffler, a snoozler, a lifelong politician. He's corrupt and crooked, just as Trump is. He's just like Trump, and you guys have tried to say he isn't. And now he's just so senile, and you're pretending he's not. So any idea that the deep fake thing is going to take down the internet, you guys have already been taken down, right? You've taken yourself down. You guys lost all credibility, and it's not coming back. So this was this emoji here, this meme. While the West is focused on condemning Iran, Israel struck a playground and killed 11 children. Today, the West has remained completely silent. Why? Because to them, the threat of single Israeli being killed is worth more than 30,000 dead Palestinians. And another one here. The West doesn't condemn Israel even after it's killed over 30,000 Palestinians, but condemns Iran despite there were 0 Israeli casualties. Western hypocrisy is on full display for the world to see. People are, but there's nothing that's going to come of this because all of that. One of my viewers sent me this. It's down here, maybe. Here it is. So this is the Different World cast, right? Except this is from Hillman to Howard. It's a different world. Hillman is the fictional school, the black college that these guys went from the show. The Different World was from Cosby, right? It was a spinoff of the Bill Cosby show. And there's something interesting here. So this was the introduction to the show, and they're doing it over again. They got Kamala Harris. There she is. They're all together here. They're coming to meet her, this fictional cast of the show. And she went to Howard University, which is an all-black college, but she's Indian and Jamaican, right? She has got different ethnicities. But more importantly, it's fraudulent because there's a key character missing from this, this reunion. The real reason Lisa Bonet was fired from A Different World. Lisa Bonet was the star, and these other characters you see there had to be elevated. Some of them are like, when they have a comedy, they have like the legitimate characters, the ones that are, the protagonists, and then they have goofy sidekicks and, crazy uncles and people. And they had to rewrite that show to make some of the characters who were, goofy and they weren't the protagonists, and they had to make them into the protagonists. But she was fired because the official story was she made a movie. I forget the name of the movie. Maybe it's here in the thing. She was in this movie called Angel Heart that starred Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro played Lou Cypher, the devil. And Mickey Rourke had sold his soul and he was already dead. And they had like graphic, demonic sex scenes. And she was fired. That was the official story. Of course, Bill Cosby had his own issues sexually. And he was great pals with the human trafficker, Hugh Hefner. And so, Playboy guy. And so, it's all a big lie, but Kamala doesn't care about that. The same reason she doesn't care about this.
Nobody should have to go to jail for smoking weed. As an administrator.
So when she was district attorney, I mean, are you serious? Like, she has the worst record on this. When she was district attorney, she put all these people, mostly black people, in jail for smoking weed. Right? It was a big problem for her when she ran for the Democratic nomination. But now she's on the opposite side of this issue and trying to erase her past.
We have pardoned tens of thousands of people with federal convictions for simple marijuana possession.
I saw these two words that said, "You're forgiven," and I started crying because it meant the world to me that my life.
It's just so bad. Her Instagram is just full of stuff like this. Says Kamala Harris. Despite Neil deGrasse Tyson's belief that you'll learn to trust the value of an expert, here's a deep fake that shows it's just the opposite.
And also known as the worst president in United States history, loves ice cream, lounging on beaches, and sniffing children. Joe.
Who is me? Wait, where am I?
This man.
That's the value of the deep fake. Okay, let's wrap this one up here. Long video today. Whatever. Had that wasted my time on that other thing, the Ava movie, but that's up for like 13% of my audience. It's blocked for 87% of my audience, but you live, you learn. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.